Billionaire brings the woman he loves to a poor house to test her. What she did shocked him. The rain was falling hard the night Emeka Okonkwo drove to the edge of Ajegunle with Amara sitting quietly beside him. He had said nothing for 40 minutes. No music. No explanation. Just the sound of windshield wipers cutting through the downpour and the occasional flash of lightning over the Lagos skyline behind them. Amara watched the streets change. The clean tarred roads gave way to flooded gutters. The tall buildings faded into low zinc rooftops. The city she knew peeled back to reveal a different world entirely. When the car stopped, she looked through the rain-blurred window at a small, crumbling bungalow. The outer wall was stained black with age. One side of the zinc roof sagged inward. A gutter at the front of the compound was overflowing with brown water. There were no lights inside. Emeka stepped out first. He stood in the rain for a moment without an umbrella, staring at the house with an expression she could not quite read. Then he turned to her. She got out of the car. They walked to the door together, and he pushed it open. Inside, it smelled of damp cement and old wood. A single bulb flickered in the parlor, powered by a small generator somewhere in the back. The walls were bare. A cracked plastic chair sat in the corner. A window louver was missing half its blades. Emeka set down the small bag he was carrying. Then he looked at her. "This is all I have left," he said. His voice was flat. Quiet. Almost rehearsed. But his eyes were searching her face like a man waiting for a verdict. Amara said nothing for a long moment. She looked around the room slowly. She looked at the leaking roof. She looked at the cracked floor tiles. She looked back at him. Then she stepped out of her heels, picked them up in one hand, and walked further into the house in her bare feet. "Then we will start from here," she said simply. Emeka stood frozen at the door. He had not expected that. He had not expected that at all. And what happened next would change him in ways that all his billions never had. Emeka Okonkwo was 34 years old and worth more money than most people in Nigeria would see across 3 generations. He had built his empire from almost nothing, starting with a logistics company he launched at 23 using a loan from his mother's cooperative. By 28, he had expanded into real estate, tech, and energy. By 30, Forbes was writing his name in lists. By 34, his name alone moved conversations in every boardroom from Lagos to Abuja to London. But wealth had not made him soft. If anything, it had made him harder. He rarely smiled in public. His employees called him Oga Emeka to his face and the Sphinx behind his back, because no matter what happened around him, his expression never changed. He moved through the world with a kind of controlled silence that people mistook for arrogance. It was not arrogance. It was self-protection. He had learned the lesson young, and he had learned it painfully. There was a woman named Chidinma. He had met her 3 years earlier at a dinner hosted by a mutual friend. She was beautiful and sharp-witted, and she had laughed at his jokes in a way that made him feel human for the first time in a long time. He had opened up to her slowly, showing her parts of himself he showed nobody else. He had talked about his father's early death. About building the business while living on Indomie and tap water. About the loneliness that came with success when everyone around you suddenly needed something from you. Chidinma had listened, nodded, held his hand. Then, 6 months in, she had quietly transferred a property acquisition he was processing through a company she had access to and redirected several millions of naira meant for a development project into a personal account. When his finance team discovered it, she had been on a flight to Accra. She never called. She never explained. She simply disappeared with the money and left behind nothing except a cold, hollow feeling in his chest that refused to go away. His mother had called him on the phone that night. He had not cried, but she had heard it in his silence. "Emeka," she had said softly, "the hardest thing in this world for a man like you to find is a woman who loves the man, not the money. But she exists. Do not close yourself off so completely that you cannot see her when she comes. He had said nothing. But the words had buried themselves deep. Emeka met Amara Nwosu at a book fair in Surulere on a Saturday morning. He was not supposed to be there. His PA had cleared the morning for a site inspection, but the engineer had called in sick, and Emeka had found himself with 2 free hours for the first time in months. He had walked into the fair almost accidentally, drawn by a crowd gathered around a display of old hardcover novels. Amara was crouched beside the bottom shelf of a stall, reading the first page of a book she clearly had no intention of buying. The stall holder was watching her with mild irritation. She did not notice. She was completely absorbed. Emeka watched her for a moment. She was not dressed extravagantly. She wore a plain yellow blouse tucked into high-waist trousers. No heavy jewelry. A small tote bag on her shoulder. When she finally stood and placed the book back, she caught the stallholder's eye, smiled apologetically, and said, "Next time, I promise," before moving on. He followed without meaning to. They ended up at the same small display of poetry collections, both reaching for the same Kofi Awuner book at the same time. She looked at him. He looked at her. "You can have it," he said. "You saw it first," she replied. "I was just going to flip through it and put it back." She narrowed her eyes. "That is exactly what I was going to do." He laughed. It surprised him. He genuinely laughed. They stood at that stall for 20 minutes talking about the book and then about other books, and then about nothing in particular, and when she eventually said she had to leave, he realized he had not once thought about work. He got her number. He told her his name was just Emeka. She did not react to it with any recognition. She did not pull up his photo on her phone. She did not look at his shoes or his watch and calculate anything. She just said, "Nice to meet you, Emeka," and walked away. He stood there smiling like an idiot for a full minute after she left. Over the following weeks, they spoke every other day. He took her to a small buka in Ojulegba where the pepper soup was excellent and the plastic chairs wobbled when you sat on them. She took him to her favorite suya spot on the island, a place so inconspicuous he had driven past it 100 times without noticing. They walked along Bar Beach one evening and argued passionately about whether Chinua Achebe's Arrow of God was better than Things Fall Apart. She said Arrow of God. He disagreed. Neither of them convinced the other and neither of them minded. He had never felt so comfortable with another person. And that was when the fear came back. His best friend and business partner, Kunal, had noticed the change in him. Emeka was smiling more. He was leaving the office before 9 p.m. He mentioned a woman named Amara. Kunal had pulled him aside one evening. "I am happy for you," Kunal said. "But Emeka, listen. If she discovers who you truly are before you know what she truly is, you will spend the rest of that relationship wondering. You know this." Emeka knew this. He had been trying not to think about it. "How do you test a person's character?" Kunal asked. "You remove the advantages. You strip away the comfort. And you watch what they do." Emeka stared at the ceiling of his office for a long time after Kunal left. That was when the plan began forming in his mind. He told Amara quietly one evening over supper that things had gone wrong with his business. He said it carefully, piece by piece, over the course of an hour. A major contract had collapsed. An international partner had pulled out. The banks were applying pressure on his accounts. He said it all with steady eyes and a flat voice, watching her face the whole time. She put down her fork. "How bad?" she asked. "Very bad," he said. "I have access to almost nothing right now." She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you okay? Not are you going to recover? Not how much exactly. Not what does this mean for us. Just, are you okay?" "I am managing," he said. Then he told her about the house in Ajegunle. An old property he had inherited from a distant uncle. He said it was all he had left to his name that was unencumbered. He said he might have to stay there for a while as things sorted themselves out. She said nothing for a long time. And then she said, "Show me." That was the night he drove her through the rain. That was the night she walked into that broken house in her bare feet and told him they would start from there. The following morning, he arrived at the house to find her already there. She had come with a mop and a broom and 2 buckets she had clearly bought from a roadside market. She was wearing an old wrapper tied around her waist over a simple blouse, her hair tied back, and she was scrubbing the floor on her knees like it was the most natural thing in the world. Emeka stood in the doorway and watched her. She looked up and smiled. "The kitchen needs the most work. The ceiling has a leak, so I put the bigger bucket there. We will need to call someone about the roof." He said nothing. "There is akra and ajij bread in that bag," she said, nodding toward a plastic bag near the door. "I bought it on the way. Eat something. You look like you did not sleep." He had not slept. He had lain awake all night consumed by something he could not name. He sat down on the cleanest part of the floor with a piece of akra in his hand and watched her clean the room. Over the following days, she came back. Every day. She scrubbed. She repaired what she could with her own hands. She bought provisions and cooked in that small crumbling kitchen. She sat with him in the evenings when the generator was off and they lit a single candle, and she talked to him in the warm dark about ordinary things. Her childhood in Enugu. The teacher who had encouraged her to read. The dream she had once had of running a community library. One evening she said to him quietly, "Money can come back. A person's character is harder to replace." He looked at her in the candlelight. "You are not afraid?" he asked her. "Of what?" she said. "Of this. Of starting over. Of having nothing." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Having nothing is not the same as being nothing. And you have never been nothing, Emeka. Not to me." His throat tightened. He looked away. He did not tell her that 3 floors of a building in Victoria Island bore his name. He did not tell her that the meetings he kept disappearing to twice a week were not job interviews but board meetings. He watched her give and give and give, and he felt guilt beginning to eat through his chest like acid. Then his assistant, following a plan Emeka had set in motion before he could think better of it, called Amara while Emeka listened through a thin wall. The assistant pretended to be a mutual acquaintance and told Amara that a wealthy businessman was interested in meeting her. He described a man who owned companies, who had seen her, who wanted to take care of her properly. He said, in the smooth tone of someone delivering good news, "Why should you suffer beside a man who has nothing? Think about your future." Emeka pressed himself against the wall and held his breath. There was a pause on Amara's side. And then she said, with a quiet, cold firmness that he had never heard in her voice before, "I do not know who sent you or what you think you know about me, but let me tell you something. A person's value does not disappear because their account is empty. The man I am with is not nothing. He has never been nothing. And I am not for sale. Do not call this number again." She ended the call. Emeka sat down slowly on the crumbling back step of the house. For the first time in years, something behind his eyes burned. He did not go inside immediately. He sat in the dark compound for a long time, alone with what he had just heard, and something in him that had been locked for a very long time began, slowly and painfully, to crack open. He hired a private investigator that week. Not to spy on Amara, but because something in her composure had begun to unsettle him in a new way. There was a stillness in her that did not match the life she appeared to live. She worked as a program coordinator for an NGO in Lagos, yes. She lived in a modest flat in Yaba, yes. But something in the way she moved through the world, the quiet confidence she carried even in that broken house, the unhurried grace with which she handled everything, it did not fit entirely. The report came back 4 days later and Emeka read it 3 times before he believed it. Amara Nwosu was the only daughter of Chief Donatus Nwosu of Enugu, one of the most quietly powerful men in the southeast. Her family owned controlling interests in a shipping conglomerate that operated across 6 West African countries. She had gone to school in London and returned home to work in the non-profit sector, a choice her father had accepted with reluctant respect. She drove a modest car and lived a modest life entirely by her own choosing. She had walked away from wealth before he had even invented his poverty. Emeka put the report on his desk and sat in his office for a very long time. While he had been testing her, she had already passed a test he didn't even know she was setting. She had known who he was. She had suspected the lie. And she had stayed anyway. Not because she was foolish. Because she wanted to see if he could trust someone enough to stop hiding. He drove to Ajegunle that evening without a plan. He found her sitting outside on a low bench in the compound, shelling egusi into a bowl in the fading light. She looked up when she heard his car. He sat down beside her. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then he said, "Amara, there is something I have to tell you." She continued shelling the egusi. "I know," she said quietly. He looked at her. "I recognized your name the second time you mentioned your logistics company in conversation," she said. "I looked you up that night. I saw everything." She paused. "I was not certain why you were lying. I thought perhaps you were testing me. I decided to stay and find out what kind of man would do that." The silence between them was heavy and warm and complicated. "I have been afraid," he said finally. "I have been afraid since Chidinma. Since long before her. I built everything with these hands and I could not understand why that would make people want to use me instead of know me. So I tested you. I put you in that house and I watched you. And I sent someone to offer you a way out. And you still did not leave." His voice was lower now. "I am ashamed of that." She set the bowl of egusi down. She looked at him directly. "You were protecting yourself," she said. "I understand it. But Emeka, you cannot love someone properly with all those walls up. You cannot receive love either. You just get very lonely inside a very expensive fortress." Something broke open in him completely then. He did not cry the way men in films cry. There were no dramatic sobs. It was quieter than that, and somehow more devastating. His shoulders dropped. His jaw unclenched. His hands, which were always slightly fisted even when relaxed, opened in his lap. And his eyes, which were always scanning and calculating and guarding, went still. "I am sorry," he said. She said nothing. She just looked at him the way she had looked at him in the candlelight all those evenings in that broken house. Without calculation. Without performance. "Can we start over?" he asked. Truthfully this time. She was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up the egusi bowl again. "Help me shell this," she said. He looked at the egusi. He had no idea how to shell egusi. He picked up a handful anyway. And she smiled. There is a house in Ajegunle that was renovated the following year. Not gutted and replaced. Renovated carefully, stone by stone, keeping the original bones of the structure. Emeka hired craftsmen who restored the walls rather than demolishing them. Amara chose the colors. They argued gently over the kitchen layout. A small garden was planted at the front where the overflowing gutter used to be. The house became a community reading center. Amara's dream, planted in the soil of a broken building that had once been the site of the most honest moment of Emeka's adult life. They did not move into it. They had other places to live. But they went there often. On Saturday mornings sometimes, when children came to borrow books and sit on the low benches in the courtyard. Emeka would sit in the corner and read quietly while Amara ran the sessions. Sometimes a child would wander over and ask what he was reading. He would always show them. His employees still called him the Sphinx sometimes. But people who knew him closely said he had changed. That there was a looseness to him now. A willingness to be seen. His mother called him one evening and asked how he was. "I am well," he said. And he meant it in a way he had not meant it in years. She said, "I told you she existed." He said, "You did." She said, "Did you deserve her?" He was quiet for a moment. "Not at first," he said. "I am working on it." His mother laughed. Sometimes the greatest poverty is not the absence of money. It is the absence of trust. It is the wall built around a heart that has been hurt, the test set up where a simple conversation would have been braver, the fortress mistaken for safety when it is only loneliness with better architecture. Emeka Okonkwo had everything the world considers wealth. And still he was poor in the ways that mattered, until a woman walked barefoot into a broken house and refused to leave. And sometimes the person who stays beside you in your darkest moment, even the darkness you invented yourself, is the only real treasure you have ever owned. If this story moved you in any way, please take a second to like this video and leave a comment below telling us what part hit you the hardest. Your support means everything to this channel. And if you are new here, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story like this one. We have more coming every week, and you do not want to be the last one to find out. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.